You wrote a book. You just talked about you having cancer and you being cancer free, and congratulations on that. That's
Thank
fantastic.
you.
Um, what did cancer teach you about yourself, and what did it teach you about teaching?
Um, well, what did it teach me about myself? It taught me, I think, more than anything else, to take nothing for granted. I don't take anything for granted anymore. We wake up in the morning and the sun is shining, I hope, or that it's light, it's bright, and there's a day for us. And I was given between 60 and 70% chance of survival over that cancer. A lot of people die over with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that's quite a leveling thought to be faced with for a good few months. My treatment lasted about 6 months, and I began not to take anything for granted. When you have chemotherapy, it hits you like a bulldozer, and you lose your strength, you lose your capacity to think for part of that time. I mean, I had 3 weekly cycles, and the first week or so, I was in a bit of a bad place. And I was looking out and I was watching people with energy moving around and doing all the things that I wanted to do, things I took for granted. I stopped taking those things for granted. Um, all the things that we do take for granted, let's not take them for granted. Let's think it's wonderful that I've just had that wonderful conversation with someone. I've just given a lesson. What an honor, what a privilege it is to give someone a lesson, whatever it happens to be. I've just walked down the street, I've just driven somewhere, I've just eaten a meal. These are all things, and there are many, many others that so many of us take for granted. I stopped taking those things for granted. I started to be much more aware, which makes me feel much better about everything. That's what I learned. I learned many other things. That's one thing I'd say I learned about myself. But and what about my teaching? Um, well, I learned that we can learn every day. Every day is an opportunity for more learning, and I think the cancer period really brought that very strongly up in my mind. Every day we must learn. I learned that the essence of our personality, and again, this is only my opinion, of course, and maybe psychiatrists, psychologists would say different things, but I think maybe the essence of our personality is how we react. We are how we react. When I think back to going back to John Davis, my wonderful teacher at school and at the Royal Academy of Music, he had a wonderful way of reacting to situations, to uh, people. And that's who he was. And when I remember, John died about 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And when I think of him, what I think about is, not necessarily his voice or what he taught me. I think about how he reacted in situations, because that's what I learned so much about. And during the cancer, that thought, that whole kind of area of thought became so much stronger in my mind. So the way we react, I think, is so very important. Um, we want to also realize, and this is something else I learned from the cancer, when you become very seriously ill, you basically lose control. You're not in control of your life anymore. We are all in control of our life to some degree. When you're seriously ill, you lose that control. You put your life in the hands of other people. They are now in control of your life. You know, they are responsible for saving your life if it's going to work. And you have to take hundreds of pills, and you have to go and have your treatment on a regular basis, and all this stuff. And I think we like being in control. But what I learnt is that I could still remain in some control at the same time as having to go with the flow. You have to go with the flow when you're ill. You can't do anything other than go with the flow. But you can remain in a certain amount of control. And when we're teaching, as teachers, we like to remain in control. All teachers like to be in control. But I think the great thing to learn as a teacher is to still be in control and yet go with the flow. Here is this particular student. They are learning at this particular speed, may not be a speed that I like, but it's the speed. It may not be a speed that any of my other pupils or students learn at, but this is their speed. This is how they learn. This is how I feel this particular lesson is moving forward. It's not necessarily what I planned or how I've done it with other pupils, other students, but this is how this particular lesson seems to be moving forward. I am going with the flow. I'm still remaining in control, but I'm going with the flow. And I think if we can, as it were, get those two great forces to come together, go with the flow and yet stay in control, I think we have mastered the art of teaching.
So, would you tell us about the day you were diagnosed? How'd you find out?
Um, I've never been ill in my life until that point. I've had cold and that kind of thing. I've never been ill at all, and I had some uncomfortable stomach pain. So I went to my local doctor. Luckily, and I owe my life to this man, I think, because he could have said, "Oh, come back in a month's time and see how you're feeling." Luckily, on that first day I went to him, he said, "Oh, let's go and do tests." So I had about a month of tests, and then I got my diagnosis, and it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it was stage 3. And stage 3 is quite an advanced stage of that cancer. So had he said come back in a month, that might have been it for me. But how did I feel when I was told that, given that diagnosis? That's an interesting question, Adam. I felt very philosophical about it. I thought, okay, this is where I am. I've been diagnosed with cancer. I've got cancer. I'm going to defeat it. I didn't think it was a battle, but I thought I'm going to defeat this. I'm going to remain positive. I'm a very positive person anyway, but I thought I'm going to remain positive through this, and I'm going to defeat it. And I'm not. And this was an interesting point as well. And I felt this very, very early on. I'm not going to be the victim. I'm not going to play the victim. Um, I'm. It's, oh no, this is the most terrible thing that's ever happened to me. I didn't want to ever go to that kind of place. I've got it. I can't not have it. I'm going to see this thing through in the most positive way possible.
So, you didn't think this was a death sentence for you at all?
No, even though I was told right up front, you have a 60 to 70% chance of survival. I was going on the highest point of survival there, and I wasn't going to entertain the idea that I wasn't going to come through it.